Sakura's cool. That other girl's a bitch, though. Fuck her. Fuck bitches.
I mean, again, I understand. I just think she was young. She was like 21. Like, I thought at 21 I was an adult and mature. And I'm like 30 now. So it's like, yeah, no, I had no idea what I was doing at 21. Then when I hit 40, I'm like, I have no idea what I was doing at 30.
And you're 40?
No, I'm not 40 yet. 30.
Oh, you're 30.
So.
My brain was like, hey, he just said, when I'm 40, I'm sure I'll... fuck, I don't know, man. Shut up, sober.
Well, you are...
I'm sure there will be plenty of me saying that.
I mean, that's kind of the point of this experimental podcast. We'll see how we'll see how a person who has never been drunk interacts with someone who has been drinking, and I don't know if it's offensive to say this, but has experience being drunk.
No, it's not offensive. I mean, it's true. I've drank enough to be drunk before.
Yeah.
Words.
Well, I mean, gaining experience builds character, but it usually helps if you can remember it. But... I
remember almost every time I'm drunk. Screw. I'm just kidding. But no, I do remember like most times that I'm drunk. I don't get like drunk enough that I don't remember things.
Yeah. Well,
except for my 21st birthday.
You don't remember turning 21?
Remember parts of it, not most of it. The next day, was it a day or two later? It was, either a day or two later, I noticed I had like a bite mark on my neck that my girlfriend had left me. I looked over at my boyfriend and I was like, when did I get this? And he was like, you got that at the bar. I'm like, shit, I don't remember that at all.
No, I've always that, like, because me and my friends turned around 21 around the same time, and I was the older one, and I was kind of pretty strict on like underage drinking. I didn't want it like happening, so like my friends never drank around me. But as soon as like they started hitting their 21st birthday, they knew I didn't drink, so they were like, "Hey, we'll give you like $10-$20 to designate drive us." And I'm like, yeah, all right, sure, because I was poor, I needed money, and like I figured it wasn't a big deal. And 21st birthday was fine. Like they got drunk, but it was that. But then they started getting like heavy drinking. They're like, oh man, let's go out Saturday, and it just kind of got more and more out of hand to the point where like one friend threw up in my car. And I'm like, that's it. You're done.
Yeah, that happened on my 21st birthday. My girlfriend, who typically has like an iron, so when it comes to things like that, that was the first time she ever puked while drinking.
Yeah, and they kept trying to take like after that. And I was like, listen, I'm not, because obviously they're drunk. What you're gonna do is like, hey, clean this up. So you're sitting there. So you're sitting there like in the middle of the night. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. You don't want it sitting, so you're just sitting there cleaning it up. You're like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. Like they didn't even warn me. They're just like, then it happened. I'm like, oh, great.
And then it happened.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Meanwhile, me, the only time I really puked while drunk was when I was in California. Ooh, excuse me. That burp tastes very much of vodka and Pepsi. It's not a nice combination. I was in California and I had like a shot of like coconut rum or something, which was a lot harder than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
So it got me drunker than was expected. Plus also the fact that I was staying at a friend's house and this friend had cat hair on literally everything, and I'm allergic to cats. So I was drunk and having an allergic reaction enough to the point where I could barely breathe. And yeah, so that's what caused me to be puking, I think. Is also the reason I don't really remember it. I didn't really watch Repo the Genetic Opera with them. This is the side note to the main story. It's like, man, I missed out on Repo the Genetic Opera, which I still haven't seen all the way through, but
yeah, well, I mean, that sucks that you're allergic to cats, but
yeah, I hate it. I love cats so much. They're great, but they make me sneeze and they make my eyes all swell and red or whatever you call it. And yeah, and if it gets bad enough, like there's enough cat hair, it will make it so I couldn't. It makes it hard to breathe.
all right. Have you like looked into hypoallergenic cats?
Not really. I don't think I could really afford to have a cat. The cat we have now is just kind of taken care of by my girlfriend and their fiance. So
you got a cat there, or
we have a cat, and she's not allowed anywhere near where I spend my time. So yeah, I don't really have to worry about her so much.
do you have to like take any medicine just to be around there, like Benadryl or?
No, well, I mean, if I want to get closer to her, like go into the areas where she spends more time, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
But considering I spend like 95% of my time at my computer, and I very defensively keep the cat away from this area, I don't really have to bother taking like Benadryl or anything.
That's good. I have a friend who's allergic to cats, and I feel bad because I have a cat where I live, and he's like, "Hey, can I come over?" He's like, "Yeah, I got cats," and she's like severely allergic, like her if she's around it too much, and she doesn't have like her allergy medicine. Like she'll have a hard time breathing too. So
I see.
But
That sucks.
and we think my sister's allergic to cats, not like bad, but she will wait, like she sneezes like all the time.
Yeah, that was pretty much how I discovered that I was allergic to cats. Was that so there were times when I would get allergic reactions to them, and I would think maybe it's just like my shampoo or something weird or something. But I didn't really realize it until I went to my friend's house. And he has some really furry cats that like to shed a lot.
Mm-hmm.
One of the cats climbed up on my lap, and I was covered in a cat fur. And I kind of began sneezing after a little while, and I was like, well, shit, this is weird. Why is this happening now? I'm like, oh shit, I'm covered in cat hair. That is the only change that has happened. Fuck, I'm allergic to cats.
Oh, yeah, cats are adorable. That sucks that.
I know, I love cats. They're the cutest thing ever, but I can't be around them.
Yeah, I don't have any pets. The animals we have there are my sister's pets, but I'm a cat person. Like, I don't mind dogs, but in terms of like taking care of a dog, I'm not good at it because dogs need like a lot of attention. Cats are just like, yeah, human, I'll let you be in my domain as long as you keep feeding me. Like, yes, I like this relationship.
This is good. Yeah, it's one reason I like it. Dogs I like too. Oh, dogs are cute. Like if it came down to it, I would rather have a corgi than most cats because I like corgis. Corgis are the best dog. I really love a happy cat who would like sleep on my bed with me and stuff. Like that would be like the ultimate choice in pet. Besides a ferret. Ferrets are the best. I would want a ferret.
Have you ever? Do you know if it's just cat dander you're allergic to, or have you ever been around other kind of furred animals? Like you're not. I assume you're not allergic to dogs.
Yeah, I'm not allergic to dogs or anything. Those are just fine. I get dogs all over me all the time. It's just the cat dander. Bamber? Dander.
Well, trying to think. I don't know, I'm more of a I'm a fan of bigger dogs. Like if I had to get a dog, like I would like a sheepdog or like an Akita or something, like a huge dog.
Those are cool too. I like big dogs. I'm just corgi is like my absolute favorite kind of dog.
I had my when I was living with my parents, before she passed away, we had a wiener dog, but she was like 12 years old and she wasn't able to like move around as much, so she gained a lot of weight
Oh.
too. We called her. She became a bratwurst dog.
That's great. I like that bratwurst dog.
She was a little tubby, but she was like a really sweet dog. It's like the only dog I let her like would let sleep on my bed. So
Bratwurst. That makes me.
have you not ate yet? Do you need to get something to eat?
No, I did technically have a sandwich before I started drinking, but I might get more food again because thinking about bratwursts makes me hungry. I love bratwurst.
See, I'm not a big fan of bratwurst. Like they always taste too bitter to me.
Oh, I don't get that at all, man. Like I think it's they're the juiciest, loveliest things.
Nah, I'm pretty filled up.
Quotes that apply to dicks.
Well, let's see. We've been talking for 15 minutes, and it finally came up.
I finally went back around to dicks.
I'm still got my lime cucumber juice that I typoed the other day.
Yeah, you enjoy that lime cucumber.
I don't know why I like it, because I mean it has, it's cum. I just for some reason had cum on the mind, so I'm like, oh, just put two. I get double the cum.
The cum has been doubled.
But no, I haven't really ate well today. Like I went to my mom's birthday party. Not really a party, kind of just like a family get together. And I was expecting like actual food because that's what we normally do. But it's like, no, all we did was cake and ice cream today. So
I see.
And I typically don't like eating sweets unless I have like something. I am very much a dessert person. I'll eat dessert, like I'll enjoy cake or ice cream or something like that, but only after I've eaten like dinner. So, but I was hungry, so I just ate like 2 slices of cake today. I'm like, I'm hungry, but I don't like feel like eating.
I see. So, ow, I bumped my kitty against my desk and that hurt. Kitties, why do you betray me?
I mean, I don't think they betrayed you. I mean, they couldn't really help it.
True, I don't know. It just, I don't know. It's oddly sensitive right now, and that's too much information for me to be saying. So let's move on here.
I mean, you're fine talking about dicks and cum, but we're talking about breast. It's too far.
Yeah, see, dicks come, it's fine, but talking about boobs, nope. That's just can't have any boobs in here, dwarf. This isn't Drake and Josh. No boobs. Yeah.
I don't even know what that means.
Have you never seen Drake and Josh?
I've seen it, but I don't know what it means about boobs.
The fact that Megan kept calling Drake and Josh boobs. That was,
I didn't know that.
her go-to insult.
Like, is that a real thing? Like they said that on Nickelodeon or whatever it was on?
She called them boobs. Like not like towards the sexual reference, but like the idiot meaning of boob.
I didn't know that. Like, I thought the idiot meaning of boob was like just a directly related to like also the sexual part. Is it kind of like is it like kind of like bum and then bum being someone who, is lazy or poor, and bum as in the part you sit on. I kind of figure it was like that. Like, oh yeah, I call it a bum because they sit on their bums.
I am frankly not sure. I kind of think that the use of boob as meaning a stupid person. Man, where did that start from? I have no idea, man.
Let's talk about the etymology of the word boob.
We'll save the etymology of the word boob for the podcast.
I mean, I'm still recording technically.
Oh, shit. Okay, yeah, we'll keep that fucking going. Like, let's see what the internet says about the etymology of the word boob. Boob. Kitty. Booby, 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 boob.
Well, I mean, and apparently it is from the word booby, from English. It is a noun that means a pejorative of idiot or fool. Slang for breast, especially that of a human adult or adolescent female. This short for booby. The noun sense fool dates to 1909, while the noun sense breast dates to 1945.
Interesting.
So apparently, I was wrong. Apparently, it was mainly for calling someone an idiot. Then we just call like breast boobs. So now I wonder if that's like, if someone says boobs, if that's like an old term, like, hey, you got idiots on your chest.
Yeah, just good old idiots on my chest. On a nice pair of idiots.
I mean, that is weird that we use a bunch of insults for like also sexual parts. Like you call someone a dick, obviously that we call our penises dicks, but it just means like someone who's being a jerk, or the same word for cunt. Like you call someone a cunt and it's like a derogatory term.
Yeah, that's weird. All of these words we use meaning genitals are just also like insults. Dick, dick, asshole, cunt, boob,
like
pussy.
Yeah, I wonder what started that actually. It was like
That is weird.
Someone get mad and just like, you're a penis, like, because that's, if you really, really think about it, it's not really an insult.
Nope, not at all. Like you're a penis. Oh, good. I'm a weirdly shaped genital organ used to, make babies.
Like, yeah, if you're seriously talking about humans in an evolutionary standpoint, where all we're here to do is basically make more of ourselves, the penis and vagina and breast are kind of the most important parts of the human body.
Yep, when it comes to an evolutionary standpoint, sort of.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not so much on the breasts.
Well, I mean,
those are important for child rearing, but there are technically other evolutionary ways that creatures have done that, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, like now we got baby formula and stuff, but you got to figure back before, like you couldn't feed baby meat unless you did like the bird thing and chewed it and like spit in the baby's mouth, but that's kind of gross.
Yeah, that's very not gross.
I mean, it's not gross.
Or I mean, no, shut up, sober. I mean, it is very gross to us.
Yeah, but I mean that's what they had to do back in the way back in the day.
True.
But no, like we just like you can call someone an asshole because that kind of makes sense because all they do is like use excrement. Like excrement comes out of them, so it's kind of an insult. But like
it's typically seen as a bad thing.
Yeah.
Our dicks and pussies and boobs aren't seen as bad things.
Yeah, like
I mean,
I mean,
being kind of
arguably
taboo.
that's what most people like about the opposite, or what they're attracted to. Like, oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
but they also call people those same parts. I don't get it. That's weird. I never really thought about it until.
You're attracted to it, but you're also like, oh man, I totally hate that. You're dumb.
Yeah, you're a boob, and it's like, okay.
Well, fuck you too.
So yeah, well, like, why don't we call people like tonsils or appendix? Because those are pretty useless.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
You can call it tonsils, appendix. What are other awful organs that don't matter? Pancreas.
I'm pretty sure.
Pancreases are always getting removed.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure those are useful at least. Like, I mean, I'm sure at some point tonsils and appendix have. In fact, I think tonsils do have a use. They're just not vital. I'm not sure on that though. That was just like an article I remember vaguely reading about. Oh yeah, hey, we kind of figured out what tonsils are for, but we don't really.
Your pinky toe or your middle toe or.
Yeah, we only really need the big toe, and like the rest could just be one giant, like one row of one toe.
Exactly.
Except me, like I can pick stuff up.
That is a very gross image. Just like one huge toe on the foot.
I mean,
it's like some Silent Hill shit.
I mean, yeah, you know, you have Pyramid Head, then you have the one toe, like two toes. It's like, why do they call him two toes? Well, you have to look at his character model. See, as
like the monster is just completely normal, except for if you really look at its feet, it has only two toes.
Yeah, it's just the one big toe and just like one super long, like small toe. And the only reason you tell is because he's wearing sandals. Just.
I don't know why that's so funny. I'm just imagining. Just imagine that now. Silent Hill creatures wearing sandals, just like regular old Silent Hill creatures, but like you're like standing face to face with Pyramid Head, and he's all intimidating with his giant sword knife, and then you look down and he's wearing sandals.
I mean, it could be worse. He could be wearing Crocs. You know,
or socks with sandals.
Yeah, and that's how you tell. Like, you just hear the flip flop sound.
You just hear the sound of flip flops, and that's how you tell the monster's coming. That's great.
So you don't need the radio. You just imagine yourself walking in the Walmart in summer.
That's my sound of flip flops.
I don't know if that's accurate, but I think everyone should know what the sound of flip flops are.
I don't care if it's accurate. I'm not. This isn't fucking like archery. I don't need to be like splitting arrows. This is more like hand grenades.
As long as you get in the general direction of what you know.
Exactly. It's not much in my case.
But it's we just have weird words actually. Like for instance, one of the biggest cuss words is the word we use for procreation. And we use it for like anyone who knows the word fuck uses it for pretty much anything.
Why did we take this cuss word or like take this word that just means sex and make it a cuss word, like an expletive? Which came first, the cuss word or the word meaning sex? I
wonder, because like I'm not an etymology expert, but I wonder if that's kind of like Victorian England or Puritan America, where like sex was just kind of this, like for some
good thing.
Yeah, it's like let's keep this secret. So when you said vulgarities, and it's just kind of like the social faux pas, where it's like, okay, well, you said the word for sex, and therefore you're saying something out loud that shouldn't be said, and therefore that's why it is now a cuss word. It's like, I mean, we kind of have I know there was the issue with, there's a reason why we call certain things like pork and certain, or like, for instance, I'm trying to think of one. Like we have beef and then we have, because we have like different words for like different meats. Like, and one's like the
beef steak, filet mignon.
Yeah, like,
chicken,
like,
venison.
Yeah, like we call certain things like, okay, well, for instance, chicken's one thing. We call the meat of chicken, but we don't call the meat of cow. We call it beef.
Right, that's weird.
So, and there was like something where, in English, or at least in England, they would use like, it would be like a class warfare thing. Like there would be the word you use to call it when you were like high society. You would call it, you would like say, for instance, you would say beef, but then the lowborns would call it cow. It's like, I'm eating cow, but I don't know. I wonder if it's something like that, where it's just
Maybe.
it's like, oh, well, we high societies don't say, we use the word procreation
instead of sex.
Yeah. And, like I was, because I kind of was raised in a pretty like sexually oppressive household, and I couldn't say sex. So I would always say like, intimate, or like,
Intercourse.
Yeah, intercourse was like the big one I'd use, because like, and no one gets turned on by that. No one's like, hey, do you want to have intercourse? They're like, what? What did you just say?
You nerd. I don't want to fucking have sex with you. No one says intercourse.
Yeah, it's like you're almost, you don't, it's almost like you're an alien. You're like, yes, I have had the human intercourse before.
Yes, I have done the sex is yes. And I have stuck in my penis into a vagina.
I have brought a feminine figure to orgasm.
Exactly. I have brought in one of these females to the point where they have the climax. Shut up.
So, like, just one of those things that we don't say those yet. But I mean, those are the words for it, but we don't use those words for it. We always, like, it seems awkward to use those words.
It's one of those things like where just it's like just it's like a dirty word in of itself, even though it is the actual word for it. But you can say weird words for it instead of the actual word.
Yeah,
like
it's,
you can't, like, you don't say penis, you say like dick, cock, or like ding-a-ling.
I don't know if I use that last one. Like, I don't write erotica and be like, and she touched his ding-a-ling.
Okay, true, but like that's like general conversations.
Yeah.
So, like you say like ding-a-ling or ding-dong or shubop, shawada-wada, yippity-boom to boom.
Yeah, I know you're getting at.
Sorry, I'm like at 6-7 shot.
Are you gonna be all right?
I'm fine.
Like, I know you said you don't get hangovers, but it's a lot of alcohol.
It's only like what 15 proof, or I think it's like proof is like double the, or no, it's 60 proof. That's it. Sorry.
So, 60 proof would be 30% alcohol.
Yeah.
See, I know
It
some.
even says in the bottle.
See, I know a little bit of alcohol. I only know vague terms, and that's because I play D&D and everything can't be ale.
Are you sure? I mean, come on, man. Ale is like the best word for alcohol.
Well, I mean, I there's ale, there's mead, and there's Elvin wine. Not just normal wine. It always has to be Elvin wine. That way you can charge your players 15 gold rather than 5.
Hooray for money sinks.
Which is weird. I mean, the money's not necessarily real either, but it can buy stuff that's like useful for the characters. But all you have to do is like, yeah, you want to press the bar wench, you can get the really top shelf stuff. They're like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. Not tangible. They're just playing pretend, but they're willing to use their pretend money to because
I pretend alcohol that
yeah
would have a pretend effect.
yeah. Well, but I mean, like all of it's pretend, but at least if they use that money, be like, yeah, you can buy caltrops, which will actually have an effect in combat. I mean, you're not going to use that wine for anything, but that's role playing though. You're not upset by it, but it's just kind of weird. It's like, yeah, you could just buy character by me, be the same thing. You're not even like writing it on your character sheet. You're just kind of knowing. He's like, yeah, I had that. I had Elvin wine, but I mean, then there's like a lot of like fantasy kind of booze. Like this is gonna because I'm not a person who drinks. So like when I first heard about absinthe from D&D, and I figured that was like a fantasy drink because absinthe was like banned or something, wasn't it? Like
something like that. It was like not easy to get, even if it was like a thing you could get.
Right, so like I never heard of absinthe. I was like, oh, it's like a fantasy wine. It's like Goblin Rot Gut, and it's just something that was fantasy, and it sounds fantasy. Like you don't absinthe just has like an elvenish kind of tone to it.
Right? It doesn't sound like it's real. It sounds like a made up thing. But then again, most things would sound made up if you took them out of context.
Yeah, like vodka. I mean, I'm not Russian. Vodka sounds kind of like a weird dwarven drink.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a real word like vodka, rum, what are some other
like
beer?
Like mead.
Mead, that's another one. Mead is a weird one.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not like a common term anymore.
No, like the only time I've ever like the time you hear about mead is like Renaissance fairs.
Yeah, like Renaissance fairs, or like I think you can still get alcohol that calls itself mead, but I actually don't know like what would classify something as mead rather than like ale or alcohol.
Like you'll see ale, but like the only way I can context mead is like if it's in a frothy looking tankard, like an old like brown tankard with a really thick foamy top to it, and it's like, yeah, that's mead. But like you see it like grog is another one. Grog is like, yeah, that's like a
very like fantasy one. I don't know if anyone actually uses grog as an actual alcohol thing.
Yeah. So I thought for sure like absinthe was just a fantasy one up until recently when someone's like, oh yeah, I want to get some absinthe. It's like, oh okay.
And you're like, oh, you're gonna get some replication Elvin wine, you fucking nerd.
I would never nerd shame on anyone. I'd be like, oh no, that's cool. So, but like most of what because I grew up in rural Ohio, so almost everything was beer. Like that was what alcohol was just beer. Then, like Dead Palette started talking about a bunch of alcoholic drinks, like all these kind of mixes and stuff. Like you're just saying words. Like I don't even know what half this means. It's like a Virgin Shirley Temple. I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know what that is. It sounds weird.
No, sorry, I don't want any child actresses being virgins. Sorry, that sounded a lot dirtier than I thought. We don't need any child actresses in here. No, no virgin Shirley Temples.
Like but like, who names an alcoholic drink of like out of a Shirley Temple? It's like, who's sitting there drinking? It's like, you know what? I want to imagine like this little girl dance around singing, because this is what this drink reminds me of.
I want to imagine I'm drinking this little girl.
Oh man.
Oh boy, this is going into a bad place.
Let us change the subject. There goes my YouTube career. Like, someone's gonna take this all out of context, edit it.
Be like, well, SoberDwarf is fucking like a pedophile or something.
Yeah, like the beard isn't helping me in that regard.
It's true. It's the beard, goggles. Like, come on, man. You gotta like change it. I'm just kidding. You look really. I like your aesthetic, your look.
Yeah, well, it's I kind of. For the longest time, always wondered, like, what can my YouTube name be? Because I just don't want to go as Mason. Mason's, like, Mason is a very dwarven name, I'll admit.
True.
But it's like, yeah, well, and that's kind of what gave me the idea of, like, well, it's dwarf. It sounds like a dwarf, so I can kind of, I was like, well, okay, but what am I just going to, well, I'll call myself the SoberDwarf because I don't drink. And I'm also, like, 5'6", so I'm not technically a dwarf, but I am.
Nerd.
What do you expect? Like, my whole shtick is about talking analytical stuff about video games.
I can talk analytical stuff about video games too, even when I'm drunk. Maybe, depending on the game.
Like, do you want? Like, we did get a comment from someone on Twitter saying we should talk about asymmetrical horror games and what all.
Pros and cons of the various asymmetrical horror games.
Yeah, and so
Definitely something I have a very, very verbal opinion upon. I don't know about you though. Do you play a lot of the asymmetrical horror games?
I've tried them out, and I'll be completely honest, I'm not a big fan of them. Not because I don't like the idea, because I think it's a really good concept. I just think that how most of them have been implemented have not been done well.
I will agree with you. There are a lot of them that are not done well. It's a genre. Asymmetrical games is like that kind of is sort of that fad of the week kind of game sort of thing.
Right.
So the fad has kind of passed at this point. But personally, I really love asymmetrical games. Like, whenever I would play Mario Party or anything like that, I would always be like, okay, come on, 1v3, 1v3, 1v3.
Yeah, no, like, the idea of asymmetrical is really good, but the problem is, like, you're having to deal with balance.
It's probably one of the biggest issues when it comes to something like
and
that. Because you have to balance it so one person is as strong as every other player combined.
Right. And usually in that case, because you also got to figure not every one of those players is going to be working together. So, yeah, no, it's really hard to balance. And this is the problem I have with like Dead by Daylight or Friday the 13th. They're really good concepts. They're like, I love the idea of each game being kind of like its own horror game or like its own horror movie. But it's like, okay, well, Friday the 13th, that game's kind of in a rough state anyway. But just the idea of like, okay, well, let me grab this person and like string him up and do something like horrific to him, so it, like, scares other players.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work like that because people just can get free and run around, or like I've watched a bunch of footage for that game where players have no problem running up to Jason and hitting him with like a baseball bat to stun him, and they just kind of like, that's not what you do with Jason.
Yeah, it's a thing where like where actual logic or other sort of logic interferes with game logic.
Right. But
Where
I mean,
it's these things like, oh yeah, the first aid kit when heal you instantly, or hiding behind cover is not gonna, heal you up when you're all bloody and shit. It's a
right. And video games have to have some sort of abstraction. Like, you can't have everything be realistic because it wouldn't be fun. I don't even like first person shooters that are realistic because, like, I mean, I respect certain first person shooters for what they do, but I like first person shooters that I can take a rocket to the face and I'll lose most of my health, but I'll still be in the fight.
Yeah, right. It's something that I like when it comes to first person shooters, because it's like you feel stronger, I guess,
Right.
or like,
well, and also,
and it's more fair. Where
yeah, you're not
like maybe just
you're not punished by just making one slight mistake, because yeah, in a gunfight that would happen, but you don't, like, if Overwatch had too many instant kills, like, for instance,
be a fun game.
Yeah, no, like, you need that for like snipers, because obviously that's what a sniper needs to do. But like, for instance, if Tracer's gun was able to just kind of kill someone because
kill you in one shot, like one bullet is all it needed to hit.
Yeah,
well, no.
And that wouldn't be fun. So you kind of need that abstraction. But the problem was like, okay, so if you're playing, for instance, if you're playing Friday the 13th and you're Jason, the thing you just want to do is have an axe, because that's a melee weapon that kills pretty much instantly if you hit a player with it. And you can do that, but like, at the point, what's the point of like grabbing someone and leading them over to a hook?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the only, see, that's one thing where it interferes with real logic, but not like movie logic or other things, because it's like you want the cinematic thing, you want the dramatic thing, like hanging, like shoving a person onto a coat hook. That's dramatic and interesting, totally something that would be in an F-13 movie.
But then, like, as a designer, it's like, okay, well, how do you do that? Because you could make Jason more powerful, but then how do the campers get away from him? How do they all, like, you shouldn't be split up, but then, like, how do you create instances where the campers have to split up? Like, it's hard to do. And the thing is, and this is something that's kind of been the flaw of like horror movies in general, is when you watch a horror movie, how many times do you like, why are you doing that? That is so stupid. Like, because obviously that is what creates drama. That's what creates tension. That's what the audience can't control it. So they watch the campers make the mistakes, and that allows Jason to do the horrifying scenes where he takes them out one by one. But if all the players are smart in a game, like they should be, they're going to stick together, and anytime Jason tries to take out one, the other one's just going to come up from behind him with a bat, and that's all they have to do. Like, stay away from Jason because he's slow, and anytime he kind of does the thing where he gets up to a person, the other players just rush Jason, and at that point, what's the point of playing Jason? Because you can't do anything.
There's some things. That's kind of where an RNG would take effect. So with speaking of F-13 specifically, when it comes to things like that, is that every weapon is not a guaranteed stun. And
right.
And you have to get the stun to be able to make Jason like drop a person if they're holding them. There are some weapons that have better stun chances than others, like the baseball bat, if I remember right, has the highest stun chance out of all of them. But even then, it still has a chance to just deal damage and not actually stun, and then not save the person. But that has the adverse effect of making the player feel worse.
Yeah, it's like,
that
well,
it's like, well, I hit him and it kind of did nothing really, so why the fuck am I doing this?
right. And in a way, that should be like, okay, well, that's because that's supposed to create the sense of like, oh yeah, you can't stop Jason all the time. You kind of gotta run away from him most times. And it's like, okay, yeah, but it's just so difficult to make something that balanced to where like, because as far as I know, everyone that I've like read on forums that, it's like I get to play Jason maybe once out of every 12 games because everyone wants to play Jason because
it's F13. I'd say is the balance is currently towards the killer and not the is towards Jason and not the counselor.
Right, and that's kind of how it should be, but then how do you make it fun for the counselors? Like,
that's one of those tough things. It's one of those things where it's like you have to either balance it right and make it fun for the counselor, or you have to depend on the like niche, like where I mean, I guess it's sort of like maybe it's sort of a niche thing where it's like people want to survive against insurmountable odds, like maybe why DayZ was so popular and things like that, where it's like, yeah, the odds are stacked against you, but you want to do this and you want to try your hardest to survive and win.
Right, but I mean, I think a lot of that kind of stems for what, like, I almost feel like the counselors need like more things to do. Like they need more things for the counselors to be proactive. And then Jason is more the sabotager rather than the monster. Like he still needs to be the monster, but like the focus of the game kind of needs to change. But that would also kind of put away the whole point of it being a Friday the 13th game.
Yeah, where it's Jason is going to kill people, and I don't know. I think when it comes to to games like that, Dead by Daylight has the flip of that. It's more of what you're talking about,
right?
Where the monster is a sabotager, and rather than just like, oh, I'm gonna just straight up jam my spear into your asshole kind of thing. It's like in Dead by Daylight, you have to kill people. You have to actually like hang them up on the hooks and shit.
Right,
but it brings up other things like, whereas it brings up it kind of causes the opposite effect that F13 has. Whereas everyone wants to play Jason in F13, no one wants to play the killers in
exactly. That's what I was about ready to say, is like it flips it around to where now it's like, okay, well, why would you want to be the killer? Because now you're having less fun because now it's kind of stacked against you.
Yeah, it's stacked against you and things feel like a huge slog. It's why I really didn't like playing Dead by Daylight too much, whereas like I couldn't play the killer up until the release of the new killer, the Huntress, who actually has she is much better balanced in my opinion than all of the others. But I couldn't play the killer at all. It felt like a huge slog to do anything as the killer, because with Dead by Daylight, to really do anything, for one, you have to hit the person twice when you're chasing them just to quote unquote down them. And then after that, you have to go pick them up, bring them over to a hook, hang them up on the hook, and either hope that they're stuck on there long enough that they get sacrificed, or hook or do that process like 3 times over.
Right.
It is like, wow, this is just not fun trying to chase these guys down, smacking them a bunch, and then like Oh, I gotta hook you up and then go check the generators. Oh, look, that person escaped again. Well, I guess I gotta hope I hook them and find them again.
Right. And it's just one of those situations where it's like, as someone who's designing that game, how do you fix that? And that's the biggest problem with asymmetrical games. Especially like, because you got to keep it with the theme. Otherwise, it's people who bought the game isn't going to enjoy playing that game. Like, because you can drop that concept and make a good asymmetrical game, but what do you do in that case? So you got to keep with the theme. But the question is, how do you keep with that theme and make it fun for everyone?
Yeah, it's a thematic versus gameplay kind of clash where
Right.
it's things like you're playing F-13 and it's like, okay, Jason in the movies almost always kills everyone except for like one person. He's the super strong guy who is going to be super hard to defeat or get away from. But then you have the game where it's like, oh, well, you kind of want to balance that out. But if you balance that out too much, it's going to feel like you aren't Jason.
Right.
It's not going to feel like the F-13 movie. I guess makes it a good bit of a point in Dead by Daylight's favor since it doesn't have that sort of association that F-13 has.
Right. And I mean, it was definitely had like the inspiration by it, but they managed to keep it different enough. Like, because that's what I was initially worried about, because they announced like Friday the 13th for the Kickstarter. Then I think not too long after that, Dead by Daylight was already out. So I was like,
Dead by Daylight, yeah, kind of like swooped in on that thing, and F-13 is just after Dead by Daylight is the top indie of it, but F-13 was the first more AAA version of it, like where you have things like to compare, it would be like the battle royale survival kind of genre, where you have PlayerUnknown's Battleground, where it's like the top of its game, but it's still indie. So there's kind of only so much it can do being an indie. But then you have that game that was recently announced at E3 for I can't remember what consoles or whatever it was, but it was called the Darwin Challenge or something, which was a battle royale survival game, but made by AAA.
right. And it's like, then there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but the problem, like, see, I think that this is something I always kind of rally against. Like, it's all right to kind of take the same idea and do it in your own way. But we kind of hit this point where, especially with AAA games, where they see something that's successful in the indie scene, and they just copy that with a bigger budget.
Yeah, that's a problem, is when they don't add things to it.
Right. It's just like, oh yeah, and not necessarily, like, it's one thing to be like, okay, well, we're adding, new weapons and stuff like that. That's not really changing, like, that's not innovating on a gameplay. And it's kind of one of those points, you don't want to change, they don't want to change too much, because if you change too much, you're not going to convince that crowd who likes the game to come over to your game. But I have this, this is like,
too little, it's just
well, it's like, for example, it's like, what was it? There was a game that basically copied Overwatch. It was like Paladins or something like that.
Battleborn?
No, Battleborn what came out before Overwatch, and that was more like a MOBA. It was something on Steam, and
Paladins was pretty Overwatchy.
So, but at that point, it's like, and granted, Paladins wasn't a AAA version of Overwatch, because Overwatch was AAA. It's made by Blizzard, so you can only get like a few steps above AAA on that. But it's like, okay, why would I just not play Overwatch?
Like, I mean, there are some reasons. I mean, Personally, as I understand it, I don't think Paladins added too much to the formula, but sometimes the indie does have the better formula to it than the AAA.
Right. Well, and I think that was one of those instances where it was just like, yeah, we made Overwatch, but it's on Steam. So if you want to play Overwatch, but you don't want to use BattleNet, like I'm speaking out of my ass here because I haven't played Paladins I'm not even sure if that's the name. And that's how little I know about it. I just know what I've looked at and what I've read and what people have said.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, like,
I haven't really tried Paladins much either.
but like a better example with this would be like, okay, Call of Duty exists, Modern Warfare, Call of Duty kind of style. Then EA created Battlefield 3, I think, and it's essentially that was EA's Call of Duty. And it's like, all right, Call of Duty, like, you're not convincing anyone to move to your game because Call of Duty is already a thing. What have you added to make this demonstratively different than a Call of Duty? It's like, well, yeah, it's like it's more Battlefield, like it's more about control points and stuff. It's like, yeah, but like if there's a whole thing where like they compared screenshots of like Call of Duty, Battlefield, and like a bunch of modern military shooters, and it's like, okay, which one is which? And like most people couldn't figure it out. It's like, unless you knew exactly what it was, it's like, yeah, I have no idea what the difference between these ones are.
Yeah, it's just like there's barely any difference, if at all, on what it is, and like it mostly maybe comes down to preference.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, I generally like how the systems in COD work more than Battlefield, and then it's just like, okay, well, kind of just becomes the same thing, but slightly different enough that it can attract some of the audience and maybe steal some of the audience from these things.
Right.
When it came to LOL and Dota, like League of Legends was the huge thing. It was the big super MOBA, and it had like all of the MOBA fans in it until things like Dota 2 came out, and then that is just like it just ripped some of the audience from LOL and didn't exactly do too much to change the formula. It just kind of
like
some very basic differences that make it feel kind of different.
Right. Like, I mean, I'm sure anyone who's played both LOL and Dota can like tell you the exact difference. But the fact is that an outsider looking in can't, kind of speaks about how the game is presented.
Yeah.
Like for instance, if you look at Team Fortress 2 and Overwatch, you can look at screenshots and watch gameplay and immediately tell how those games are different, even if they are somewhat similar in like basic concept.
Yeah. A lot of things that are very different between those two.
Right. And that shows that you can make games that are different but still the same and just have a different spin on it and be successful.
You can have your good like variation on this thing. You just have to have the variation enough to do it. And there are things like that, whereas like I guess the main comparison I think in my head would be like, you have Minecraft as this crafting survival-y kind of game at its base, but then you have like what is that? I can't remember the name of it. It's like Don't Starve, which is very similar to Minecraft in its base concept, where it's like, you're just a person here. You start from scratch and you build up and craft things and slowly progress through the world. But they have very different game feels to them.
Right, exactly. And I think that's important. Like, if you're going to change it a little bit, then like you can take the same idea and have your own spin on it. Like, in writing, there's something that I always tell people is like, nothing is original. It doesn't matter how original you think your idea is, it has already been done. And that's not necessarily the point of writing. It's not to be original. It's to tell a story in a way that is different enough that people who know the story, like they know the basic concept, you're going to provide a different spin on it and give them like a different experience with it.
Provide your spin on it, to provide your version of that story, and it's on you to make it different enough from the other things that it's not like, oh, this is just like fucking To Kill a Mockingbird. Why would I not just read To Kill a Mockingbird instead of read this?
Right, and that's the point. It's like, how many times is it's this trope, but it's basically everyone tells the same story, but everyone has their own different spin on it, and that's like the story itself. It's like, oh yeah, no, I was here. This is how I seen it. Crap.
It's like that movie Hoodwinked or whatever.
Right.
Everyone has their version of the story where it's different from the others, but it's different.
Right. And
it's different, and you can feel it's different.
And almost every kind of story or medium has kind of touched on that kind of storytelling, that like, but you don't be like, oh yeah, no, I've already watched it, I'm not going to watch this one, because if someone provides a different spin on it, it doesn't matter. You can tell the same story, but as long as you tell it differently, and people are going to be interested, because we're not necessarily interested in originality. That's what, like, I am not the only person on YouTube who does video game analysis. Like, I do it in my own way, and that's the only reason why it's different. And that's why people can watch, this other person, they can watch Post Mesmeric or Game Maker's Toolkit, because my style and the way I tell it is going to be different than how they tell it, even if we talk about the same topic and tell you the exact same thing.
Yeah, they all have their own ways of saying it. Like, there are people like Extra Credits who do it with, like they have that silly voice for their main narrator, that kind of high-pitched squeaky thing for Dan.
Mm-hmm.
Have everything animated and things like that, versus where you have like you're a real person, you have these clips of the gameplay, you make puns and things and these silly jokes that are very you.
Right, and that's the important part, and I think that applies to gaming a lot, and kind of leaning it back into the, Dead by Daylight and Friday the 13th are different games. They are doing their own interpretation of essentially the same thing, and that's good. I think that's very important because that's doing it right, but also I don't think either of them kind of figured out the perfect way of doing that, because it's all a matter of their own different styles that way.
It's a matter of styles, and each game is going to appeal to different people. I mean, there are some objective things that can be improved in both.
Right.
Where like F13 has a much better graphical style. Like, they're generally just higher level graphics than Dead by Daylight, just by very, polygon count or whatever the fuck it is you call it. But Dead by Daylight has things like a lot more server stability versus Friday 13th, which is very buggy and can be hard to connect to people sometimes.
Right, and it's just one of those things where I think, especially in a situation like that, I think asymmetrical gaming is going to... I'm not against asymmetrical gaming, because we've kind of done symmetrical gaming kind of to death. Not necessarily... Yeah. It's not getting away. I don't want to say to death. Like, there's still going to be asymmetrical games, but we haven't really really explored asymmetrical gaming. So I think there's going to be a lot of situations where asymmetrical gaming is going to allow us to come up with ideas that we never really thought able to do.
There's a lot of fun things like that you can do with the asymmetrical thing. It's just it hasn't really gone beyond its infancy stages, really.
Right, and I think
like adolescent stage.
And I think it's going to be harder to do because a lot of there's not a whole lot of game design like experiments or ideas. Like even like the earliest asymmetrical gaming has mainly been fighting games, because it's just how each character has been different. Like, you know, you're not always having like a Ryu versus Ryu fight or even a Ryu versus Ken fight. Like, it's like, okay, you have Chun-Li who fights this way and
Ryu fights another way.
Right. And that's early asymmetrical gaming, but that's also kind of not necessarily what we associate with asymmetrical gaming. Because you can say, well, it's a fighting game. They both function somewhat similarly. Whereas
they both have the same basic level mechanics when you look at it, versus something like F-13 or Dead by Daylight, where the basic mechanics are very different. It's more of each side is playing different games.
Right, exactly.
Whereas like F-13, you play either as someone trying to survive or someone trying to kill the others, which are two kind of different games. But in a fighting game like Street Fighter, you're playing the same game. There are just various minor differences in each.
Right. It's kind of like Overwatch in that sense. Like each hero in Overwatch plays differently from each other. And part of that is understanding how that asymmetrical works between it, but you're still effectively playing the same kind of game.
Yeah. You're both playing the same FPS game. It's just there are slight differences in the characters.
Right.
And possible strategies that you could use to make those characters work.
And I think the biggest issue with that is like we've kind of went headfirst into asymmetrical like opposition, which is really like, again, trying to balance that out is extremely difficult because you're trying to figure out, okay, how does one player compare against even like, you know, Mario Party? How do we balance it against 3 players? Because in Mario Party, typically it's always in favor of the one person. Like there's certain games where it's like if the players team up or if the players get lucky, they can beat the one person. But usually it's like, I'm thinking of the game where it's like the one person and the other 3 people are like pop outs trying to like dodge arrows.
Yeah.
A lot of it's kind of stuff like that where it's Mario Party. The mini games are very simple, but now we're trying to do it in like a whole complex thing. Like
we have whole games based around these instead of just the, little tiny mini games. You have to make a whole game based around the fact that you are balancing this one person versus like 4 other people.
Exactly. And it's
like there's a very high level amount of variables between people, which means that the games themselves are very variable in themselves.
Yeah, and that is going to be, I think, the biggest issue. I think what might be better is maybe do like asymmetrical co-op stuff. Like I'm not going to tell anyone to create what they want. If they got the budget and they feel like they can do it, but I think it might be better to be like, okay, well, maybe I know this has been done before where it's like, okay, you have people on playing a first person shooter, but you have one person to roll the commander and they're not on the field, but they're like, they can see the field and they can be like, okay, let me like build something here let me put like the ammo regen here so that,
yeah.
So, and like stuff like that's been happening for a while, but
But personally, I would say that those things never really took off.
no, they never.
Yeah, those things never really took off too much enough that people could kind of get a handle of that before moving on to the competitive version.
Then I don't think that, because I'm kind of like thinking, okay, well, what if you had like for instance, this is something I just thought of, like just on the top of my head, but maybe have like a stealth game where like someone is in a command position and they have like a bunch of information and they're giving that information to the person who's doing stealth. The person who's doing the stealth part can do it on his own just by like his own wits, but maybe like the person in the command seat can do like give better ideas and stuff like that. And meanwhile, like the person that's doing stealth is trying to get information so the person in the command seat can like put something together and figure out, like, you know, they're working together to achieve a common goal.
A similar goal. Yeah, a common goal. Where like I can barely think of any games that do anything like that. Like the only one I could think of at this point would be that one VR game.
Yeah, keep talking and no one explodes, or
yeah, keep talking and no one explodes. That's it. That's pretty much the concept of that. And if we had more things like that, we can maybe more work things out on how to blend different game styles together to make a single game and have it be fun for both sides.
Right. Because that is the biggest problem, is that, and this is like the biggest complaint about asymmetrical games. And granted, this is an argument that's made for every like game out there, is that it's not balanced, or this class isn't fun, or something like that. But it seems like, especially like, again, I've looked at forums on Friday the 13th because I was interested in a game, but being a person who is on like a very small budget for like gaming, like I'm basically doing like 3 weeks of homework before I buy a game, like a brand new game. So I'm looking at it and people are just constantly like, being a counselor sucks. Like, I don't feel like I can do anything. And I never get to play Jason. And the only time you have fun is when you're playing Jason.
Yeah.
And I think that's gonna have to be the issue that's solved. Like,
it's an issue that takes a lot of balance, and I don't think any of the current, at least more major games, have really worked it out yet. I mean, that there are, of course, a lot of smaller versions of this asymmetrical horror formula, like Damned or Dead Realm, which, I mean, I haven't played either of those in a long time, so I couldn't say on whether or not they're better balanced than the others, but that's also maybe a bit of a problem in of itself.
Right.
They just don't have enough players. It's that instead of having issues with the gameplay itself, they have the issue with the player base.
Right. And I think probably, like, I don't want to speak on this as an authority, but I think what might be the future of asymmetrical games isn't going to be like the 1 versus 4. I think a lot of it's going to be eventually blending different play styles together. Like, I think it's going to be, and I think it would be pretty awesome. Like, for instance, maybe you have an RPG and like the gunner plays it more as a first person shooter, and the person who plays it, plays the like activity,
plays it more like a third person beat 'em up or whatever.
Right. And I think, you can have player versus player in that way. And as long as you kind of balance out the damage and output and maneuverability, you could start doing stuff like that and make it asymmetrical, but essentially not have to worry so much about the balance. But that way people can be like, I want to play this as a first person shooter. And they can play the game like a first person shooter. Whereas the person who plays it more, they play the wizard, plays it more like a, kind of more of a Magica style where they're like combining elements to make certain spells.
Style or Lich to Battle Mage or some things like that.
Yeah, and I think once you can kind of build that, I think that might be the future of it, because I think once people kind of figure that out, how to do that, you're gonna get people that aren't gonna be upset that they can't play the monster, because anyone can play the monster. And whether that's, you can consider that asymmetrical is one thing, but I think that's really what it's gonna kind of be down to.
It's these things where you blend the different genres together into one game and you have all of these options for the people. But, you know, it's the jack of all trades, master of none. You know, where you have these games that are specifically first-person shooter or specifically X, Y, Z, but your game has all of them. So all of these people who like these different styles can play together in one thing.
Right. And then, you know, you could probably change it up. Like, okay, well, maybe, like, for instance, this team is the first-person shooters. Like, it's first-person shooters versus, you know, you kind of get that, like, in certain Overwatch matchups when they do, like, the fun, kind of goofy ones, where it's like, okay, well, you have Choreborns versus, we'll say Sombras, and in that case, it's more like, okay, you have, like, a tower defense mode, and, you know, kind of a stealth.
Versus a stealth thing.
And I kind of think that's where it might end up. I think that's really where it's going to end up going. Again, I'm not speaking on...
it goes more towards that, and instead of the general, maybe competitive vibe it's had for a little while.
Right, and I understand why they want to do the competitive vibe. I just... It feels like it's almost insurmountable to kind of make each one be equal. Because, I mean, that's hard. Like, because you got to make it fun. And... like, if you make something too powerful, it's not fun for the other. If you make it too powerful for the other side, it's not going to be fun for the one person. If they're both equal, then at that point it's like, how are they equal? Because if it's because neither of them can do too much to the other, then where's the interaction at that point?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like you don't want to make it too weak for one side, but you don't want to make it too strong for the other. Like, specifically with Dead by Daylight, my mind specifically comes to one kind of mechanic in it that is very one-sided on it. When in Dead by Daylight, if you have a toolbox as your equipped item, you can sabotage the hooks that the monster can put on these, put the players on when they catch them. But the thing is that sabotaging a hook takes a while. Plus, you have to make some skill checks. You know, you have to like do a little quick time event for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it also just alerts the killer that you're there doing this when there are literally so many better things you could be doing with your time than sabotaging a hook, to the point where sabotaging a hook is a completely useless mechanic. Just because more often than not, the map design includes like a hook close enough to where, you know, where the killer is, that they don't have to bother going to the broken hook. It's like, okay, well, whatever, I'll just go to the other one.
Yeah, and that's... like, obviously the developers have to know this, but at a certain point, they're probably... I would imagine you'd be like, well, what do we do? And it's like, well, we can add this mechanic in. It's like, yeah, but what does that do? It's like, well, it gives this option. It's like, well, I guess it's better to have more options, but again, as you kind of...
it's not really much of an
option.
It's there, but it's not viable, is the point.
Right, and you have that in other games, too. There's been fighting games where, like, you just cannot play a certain character. Like, you know...
like, if I remember right, some version of Street Fighter had a character named Dan or something.
Yeah.
Who is just a weaker version of Ryu. So it's like, why would you play this Dan guy when he's literally just weaker than
right. And like
a weak Ryu?
Like I'm the kind of person who plays Dan because I just like, I like throwing the Gadoken, like, doing a super move, knowing that it's going to stop short right of the person as I go to hit them. Because to me, that's a thematically fun thing to do. Like, you throw that and you're like, super attack, and it completely misses, then you taunt them. And I think that's what he's in there for. But, like, if you're playing competitively, yeah, no one's going to play Dan.
Yeah, and it's more of that. I mean, you do have your version of, you're the person who likes Dan, but you're in a very, very low minority.
Well, yeah, no,
especially when it comes to a competitive.
If I was gonna, if someone's like, okay, you're gonna have to play this competitive, and if you don't at least place in the top 100, I'm gonna like cut your one giant big toe off, and I'm like, oh no, okay, well I'm not playing Dan because I know I'm not gonna get top 100. So like, yeah, I wouldn't, and in that case, it's like, okay, well. Yeah, Dan's completely not a viable option. But like, again, like, even in certain, like, I'm trying to think, because I used to know this. There's like certain characters in like Street Fighter 3 that just no one played because they just were comparatively always worse than another character. Like, a lot of people didn't play Ryu because Ken had more options and was better. Like, Ryu had moves, and those moves weren't necessarily useless, but they were just less effective than playing a character that had this similar play style, but just had better options for moves. That's kind of like, that's probably a more accurate representation of it.
Yeah, there's those things like when you got like Super Smash Bros. Brawl, it's like Fox versus Falco.
Right, no, that's a great example. Like, people play Fox because Fox, like, I know people play Falco. Falco's not a bad character, but, like, Falco.
But he's not as good as, he's pretty much objectively not as good as Falco with how the game is structured. Or, opposite. Falco is not as good as Fox with how the game is structured.
Right. So, and you just kind of have those situations, and that's going to be the biggest flaw. It's like, okay, you can give these players options, but like if an option isn't necessarily useful, then is it really an option at all? Like that's called dominant strategy. Like especially players who play competitively are just going to do the dominant strategy. They're going to do what works the most effective.
Exact. It's I think kind of they use the term a little different when it came to for extra credits. They came up with a term, first order optimal strategy or something like that. It's like, this is the guaranteed best. This is the objective best of it. You can do these other things. They do have some bonuses, but in the end, they are objectively worse.
Right. And as a game designer, it's almost literally impossible to make something equal unless it's the same. Like in Overwatch, okay, in certain instances, Lucio is better than Mercy, because if you have a team set up that is always going to be together and they're not going to take too much damage all the time, then you don't really need a Mercy. But if you're looking strictly as someone that can heal quick and heal better, then Mercy is objectively better in that situation.
And it's trying to make sure that there's a balance of those situations, right, where each is both, where it's like, you could play Mercy and do just as well as a Lucio, or you can do
right. And yeah, it's the point of making it to where even if one is objectively better, the other options aren't necessarily bad options. And I think that's kind of about as close as you can get to balance as possible. So, but yeah, that was actually, considering it sounds like you're sobering up just a little, but considering you're drunk, that was actually a pretty in-depth conversation.
Slightly, yes, but these are opinions that I have held for a long time, and I do very much like game design when it comes down to it, and I do kind of like to think about it. I mean, which is one of the reasons why I love your channel, is that you get into these things, and I have done things where I posted like a page-long rant on the specific design of one area in Skyrim, just because I realized how kind of ingenious it was.
Yeah.
On how they designed it.
No, I love video game like analysis and discussion, and I'm the kind of person, like, I was talking to someone on my Discord the other day just about like, yeah, you know what, I can probably do a whole video on just talking about the user interface design of Final Fantasy and how that evolution throughout the years signified the changes that Final Fantasy was going through as a series. And I love talking about stuff like that. So
there are so many things that work within a game and can be different, and it's fun to debate and just kind of see what the general what people think of each of these individually, and it's like, okay, so yeah, the various different perspectives, because a lot of these perspectives are things that you would have to take into account when creating a game.
Right. And yeah, that's the thing about game design, is that it's not like, game design is not a science, but at this point it's kind of like people have done it for so long, we kind of figured out what works and why it works. So, but a lot of it, you're still kind of like, if you design a game, you can take a look at every successful point that everyone else has done and use those points, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a good game. It's like the whole,
exactly.
It's like Candy Crush. Like Candy Crush, I don't like Candy Crush because it is a very much, let's use like the psychological aspect of game design to make an addictive game. But it's also not a very, like, it's a very shallow game because of that.
Exactly. There are these things where you have this manipulation in various areas, where you have Candy Crush playing into the very Skinner box accents. I almost said accents. Aspects of game design. And I mean, it's not necessarily bad to have a kind of a Skinner box. It can be kind of rewarding, but it's these things where you have too much of it.
Right, and well,
Candy Crush is just a Skinner box,
right?
And
and that is the big issue with a lot of like game design, where people just like, oh yeah, no, I know how to make a Skinner box game. This game's gonna automatically be successful. So, yeah, it's
these things playing to the base things that you may know to be true, and might be successful. Does that make it right to do it? That's when you kind of get into morality, kind of, in a way. It's like the recent Emoji movie. It's like this thing's very popular, and we're gonna make money from it, but it's not exactly contributing to anything in a meaningful way. So why kind of do it? Besides money,
right? No, that's kind of, and that's what, because game design is art. Like, I know people kind of get in a whole argument of like, well, are video games art and stuff like that. But no, you're building something that people experience. So you're making art. You can make something that is just technically good art, but not anything special. Like, it's, yeah, no, you drew the proportions right. You emulated the style really good. But what
you're a brush for brush stroke replication of the Mona Lisa, but it's just a replication of the Mona Lisa. It doesn't
Right.
have that
Like, even if it's
meaning that the Mona Lisa would have.
right, exactly. And video games is like you're having to, like, you're still using all the tools. I don't know a modern game that doesn't have like some sort of Skinner box. And that a Skinner box isn't necessarily bad, because that's it's a reward progression. That is the psychological thing. We care about Skinner boxes because they do feel good. But if there's not something behind that, like, okay, what do I get out of that Skinner box? Like, there's got
to be a reason for the Skinner box,
right? And a lot of games don't necessarily understand, what they're tools. It's not, the Skinner box isn't the content. It's what you use to make the content.
It's one of the many aspects that you can use,
right?
But it's not what you should be 100% focusing on.
Right. Like this is an analogy I use a lot because I'm a big person. It is like a cake. You can make a good cake, and usually the best part of a cake is usually the icing. Unless you make a really good like foundation, a lot of people like icing on cake. Like, I personally, like, someone just like, hey, do you want this just plain boring ass cake, or do you want the cake with icing on it? I'm like, yeah, give me a slice of the icing. But you cannot have a cake that is just icing. Like,
exactly.
Like, you try, and it might be good for that first bite,
or maybe like the one or two people who are just, ooh, I'm so into icing and not the cake.
Right. But like, if you had a whole cake that was just icing, you would get sick of it. Like, it's just too sweet. It's like too much. So it's
just not enough. I mean, in technicalities, objective, like a measuring sense, it does have the amount of substance, but it doesn't have the more figurative substance.
Right. And people want substance. Like, this is something, and this will probably be where I kind of end off on this conversation, but when I did the Final Fantasy XI video, the reason I like Final Fantasy XI is because it was kind of not designed as a Skinner box. There was a lot of like emotional, it was not a quote unquote, like, it was not a rewarding game. Like, there was a definite sense of rewarding feeling from it, but that was a very personal reward I got from the experiences from it. If I play a modern MMO that's just kind of followed that Skinner box psychology, like, I'm going to feel like I'm making progression, and I'm going to enjoy playing it for maybe a little while, but as soon as I'm done playing it, I'm not thinking about it. Like, I played MMOs, I played like Perfect World, I played a few other, like the free ones, and it's like, okay, yeah, they were enjoyable for the time I played them, but as soon as I was done with them, I didn't feel like I pulled anything from that. It felt like it was just, I was kind of running a treadmill. So
yeah, it's those things where it's what's the word, like a very shallow meaning versus a deeper meaning.
Right, and
it's you have these things that stick around where, like, when it comes to movies, it's like you have things like the recent Emoji movie that's nothing but corporate shilling crap.
Exactly.
So,
and
things like Eraserhead, which you would think about for, frankly, just kind of a long time.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with the, like, you call those popcorn movies. You call them movies that you're bored on a Friday night, you need something to do. Like, why not just spend $12 to go with a friend, watch this kind of dumb movie, go out, get something to eat afterwards, talk about how dumb the movie was, go home, and forget about it. But, like, for a game, like, if you're making something, if that's what you're making, that's fine. But you can't expect people to, like, care about it. Like, if you make that kind of game, you're not leaving people aren't going to be talking about it like 3 months from now.
They're not going to be talking about individual COD games 3 months from now. They're just going to be talking about how much of a,
yeah, it's just going to be like
garbage fest it was.
Right. And it's like same for like, I mean, any game could be like that. There's JRPGs out there that have been so tropey and so like kind of by the books, so really flashy because, they got a big animation budget and they, hired a like character designer. So it looks good and they do everything right in the presentation, but they kind of forget to add a meaning to what they're doing. So you play it and it's like, yeah, no, I had fun, but like none of it spoke to me. Like I couldn't tell you who the main character was or why he was doing it. Whereas
I have these cliche things that's like, oh yeah, I recognize this and what the emotional impact of it this is supposed to be, but it's doesn't have the actual impact.
Right. And a lot of that is like because they were focused way too like, and this is why game design is not a science. Like you cannot just make a game that has all the fun stuff and that be a good game. And in fact, I think if you do too much of the fun stuff, if you throw too much of that icing on there without any foundation, you're going to have this issue of a game that feels completely like, it feels like nothing. It feels like, yeah, this is just meant to, like, This
is just the sugar. This is the icing. Yeah, it's fun, but there's nothing of that to balance it out or make it worth eating. It's like, you can fucking buy icing at a store easy as shit.
Right.
But buying the cake itself is what makes it.
Yeah, no, it's taking the time to make that foundation, to build that cake. Like, okay, you use the egg, you mix it, you're going through the trouble, like of all that time you cook it, and by the time you finally make that nice looking cake and you have a bite of it, it's rewarding. It's like taking the time, you take the time to do the labor, and technically the probably not fun parts. Like, there's times where in RPGs you kind of got to go through the little dumb side quest occasionally, or the part that isn't fun, but usually that's what builds up to the more rewarding sections.
Exactly.
So,
that try to be 100% fun or 100%. Oh, look at this! This is amazing all the time, constantly. Whoa, wow, amazing! It kind of just dulls your, dulls the fun. Like,
yeah, no,
too much fun is a bad thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what pacing's supposed to be about. Like, this is kind of a different subject, but like, you need slow parts to make the faster parts more impressive, because if you just keep raising the tension, like after a while, it wears on you, because you can't keep escalating. But because after a while, everyone hits a peak. Everyone's going to be like, if you had a horror movie where the killer was just getting closer and closer to kill the person, after a while, like, it doesn't matter. It's like, just, are you going to do it? Are you going to kill him already? I'm done. Let me get on with it.
Like the killer's chasing the person, and like they slowly are gaining up on them, and you're like, oh shit, for the first little while, but eventually you kind of get to the point where they're like a foot or two away from them, and you're like, why haven't you killed them yet?
Yeah,
this doesn't make sense. There's no meaning to this. It's you're just to elicit a response, and it's not working because you've already done this.
Yeah, and that's
done this a lot.
And that's why a lot of times, like horror movies don't do that. They'll have the killer get really close and be a really close call, then it stops. Like, they get away, and if they do it well, like, you're not having a scene like that for another 5 or 10 minutes. Like, they take a break, they pull back, and they do the things that you're not necessarily watching a horror movie for. Like, they're talking about the exposition. They're talking about, like, oh, where did this killer come from? Who is he? Like, you don't, like, people don't go to horror movies to, like, figure that out. Like, they're like, oh no, I really want to know where this psycho, like, what is a psycho killer's motivation? That's not what they do, and that's not what they show in, like, the teasers. But that is technically probably more important. Because that's what...
You want to know why the killer, or how the killer, or things. You want to know the details. But if you just have the killer killing things, it's like, okay, yeah, this is what I already got. I got what I wanted. It's not. This isn't enough to keep me entertained.
Right, like, and that's kind of one of those things. It's weird because the audience doesn't necessarily know what they want. Like, they know what they want, but they don't necessarily know what's best for them. It's like having a kid and being like, all a kid wants to eat is candy because it's nice and sugary and stuff like that. But you kind of can't just give them candy because after a while they get sick.
You get sick of the candy, you get sick of the taste, and then in the end it kind of just ruins candy for them.
Right. So.
Well, shit.
So.
No.
Well, we kind of ran the gambit, and we're actually almost on 2 hours.
Seriously, damn.
Yeah. So.
The whole thing of this was supposed to be, I'm drunk as fuck. I can very seriously talk about these kind of things.
Well, we can blame Abysme because he gave us a serious topic to talk about.
That's true. He gave us a serious topic to talk about. We need to have like a more ridiculous topic, like fucking sexuality of Overwatch characters, or boobs. Boobs are a good topic always.
So, all right. Well, I guess this is where we do plugs. I mean, speaking of sexuality, I mean, I don't mean that sexual ones, but
check me out at livejasmine.com/Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm not like there would be no point in me opening it. If I opened a webcam like thing, I'd owe people money.
I could technically do it, but it would have to be a very niche thing,
Yeah.
It's like, one of those sites dedicated to trans people or whatever.
Right.
Fucking porn communities like calling it these days.
So, but you do have a channel which you stream, and you have been the reason why you are drinking is because you had to deal with one of those.
Yep, I had to. Well, I mean, it's very much different from what we've been talking about. It's more of it's more of too much of an author's vision in a kind of weird way. Like, you want to have an author's vision, but not to a very bad point, like Creepypasta Land, which I just played on my channel.
That's probably another topic we can talk about at some point.
Maybe save that for the next episode to talk about gratuity or whatever you want to fucking call that shit. But yeah, check out my Twitch channel. I think it's like Jennyferific. Yeah, Jennyferific. Is my Twitch channel, and then my YouTube channel is just Jennyferific.
And I am SoberDwarf. I do video game analysis on my channel. On YouTube, you can just type in SoberDwarf. I'll be the first one that comes up, but I believe it's actually SoberDwarf Show because they would not allow me just to have SoberDwarf. I was really upset by that.
Oh, it shows up as just SoberDwarf. It's
you'll like people can find it. So, and
but yeah, I recommend his videos. He does the good things on video game design and very much often covers things that are really cool or wouldn't be covered by other things like Taboo and FF11.
Yeah, so check that out. And also, wherever this is posted, we haven't figured that out yet. I might just throw it to Abysme, be like, Abysme, here's something you can throw on Raw Dogs.
Throw it on Raw Dogs. We could have these is this blue
Well-
Yeti / blue Nessie. I am slightly disappointed that this isn't a blue Yeti because I wanted to be all like, oh yeah, I can make the joke now, and yeah, blue. I'm blue Abysme. Hey, Yeti.
So, like, wherever this ends up going, support that. Like, subscribe,
Exactly.
So,
Subscribe to Raw Dog, the best UCA ripoff on the internet, and then subscribe to UCA, and then subscribe to Midnight Marinara, even though they're technically the same channel as UCA.
yeah, make sure.
And then also subscribe to all the other people.
Yeah, just subscribe to everyone. Like, not subscribe.
Just see a channel, subscribe to it. It's like, oh, hey, look, this is a channel I don't know anything about, and I hate the content of. Subscribe.
Yeah, because that's how it's supposed to work, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
You
everyone-
just listen and watch everything constantly, regardless of whether or not it is content you actually care to watch.
Well, I mean, like every YouTuber I watch is they tell me to like and subscribe before they even tell me what the show is. It's like, hey, make sure you smash that subscribe button, and then here's on with the show. I'm like, wait, what?
Not me. See, not me, and not you. We're like, I can't bro fist my mic because that would probably sound terrible. Like a bro fist for you, us, like stand up people who are like, oh well, she's like, if you like it, you like, comment,
Right.
subscribe, whatever. I don't fucking care.
You know, it's YouTube.
You know what to do. These are the basic mechanics of YouTube. If you want to do it, do it. If not, I don't give a flying fuck. Even though your channel is kind of your main source of income and living.
Yeah, I do kind of care, but I also want to, like, I understand people don't like it. I just want people to enjoy it, and if you do enjoy it, like it, that's all I care about. Like, that's really,
Exactly.
we got one life to live. YouTube's a thing. Just fill it with good things in your life.
Yeah, you fill it with the things you want to do, things with what you would like to see, and if others like to see it, then so will be it. Do the good thing. Don't do the Matt Pat thing. Or just fucking do all this stupid bullshit just for views. I'm sorry. Wait, what?
And just to kind of clarify what this is, Jen here is drunk, so she cannot be held responsible for anything that she says.
I am like 7 shots of 60 proof vodka. Am I 7? 6 or 7? I don't know. I've lost track. I don't really count my shots. But I've had more shots than Tupac has it.
And I am
I'm
sober.
sorry for any rap friends. That's awful.
And I am sober, and I have been drinking lime cucumber juice, which is really good. I also recommend it if you're not in alcohol. I'm sure you can put alcohol in it, but
Yeah, you could have your alcoholic lime cucumber juice.
all right. And we will end it here. Good night, everyone, or good morning, however you want to call it.
Goodbye. Bye-bye.